With your Credit Flex Credits Enterprise Suite account, you have access to 3 tiers. I'm sure you're following the best practices to organize your data in different tiers.
Yeah, by using infrequent or frequent tier, I can store much larger data sets in Sumo Logic, and a much lower cost overall.
That's right. Have you set up a partition in the infrequent tier using the partitions page in Sumo Logic?
Certainly I did. It was easy to follow the best practices. First, I collected data in Sumo Logic. Then, I routed my data into the different tiers at the partition level. I created a routing expression, and selected the target tier for the data that matches the routing expression. I have 2 data sets I implemented tiering for, and for each set up new partitions. As a best practice, I created an appropriate field extraction rule by parsing fields from the log messages at ingestion. I decided to use a custom field in Sumo Logic called tier as the method to route data into partitions with different tiers. So there are 2 datasets I want to implement. First, I routed all logs for a collector, using a field set on the collector, and secondly, I routed debug logs by setting the field in a field extraction rule.
Impressive! You summarized it well. Let's walk through the configuration steps in the Sumo UI. Let's start with the collection page. Go to Manage Data and Collection.
Here, I'm using a hosted collector.
You got it right. Next step is to route data. Let's check Manage Data, Logs, Partitions page. To create partitions in your environment, you need to be an admin, or your role must have the Manage Partitions role capability.
Understood. So I clicked Add Partition, and created a new partition. This is the name given to the partition. I also added a routing expression.
Let's ensure that you're not overlapping data. If you create overlapping partitions, you're going to duplicate the data. This might be costly to store and process. Note that when you don't route data in Sumo Logic to a specific partition, it goes to the continuous data tier by default.
I can edit any of these collectors and add a field. I can do this across a bulk set of collectors. Then, I've defined a tier by assigning metadata at the collector or source level, using fields to make tier decisions.
Great! This field allows you to assign the data coming from the collector to the infrequent tier. You can do that across collectors and across sources. This gives the flexibility to add entire data sets to one of the tiers, in this case infrequent data tier. You can even split a given data set. For example, if you don't want to send all your application logs to the partition from infrequent data tier, you can split them. You may want to send debug logs only to the infrequent data tier.
Got it. So I'll define a scope by assigning a metadata field, either at the collector or source level. So any data from this collector or source should go to the frequent or infrequent tier, after defining a tier field.
You can also define a field extraction rule that lets you specify which data you're sending to which tier. You can use traditional metadata tags like _source category.
In the Sumo UI, I clicked Logs, Field Extraction Rules. Here, I created a field extraction rule with custom logic. I am parsing out log level from application logs, and the level name is debug. When it's a debug log, it will be routed to the infrequent tier. Otherwise, it's going to the continuous tier. I am calling that field tier so I can get more precise and determine which data goes to which tier.
Absolutely right. And you're all set. You see, this method is more flexible. As your data changes over time, you can change which data is going to which tier. Additionally, it allows you to reuse partitions, keeping the number of partitions low.
Thanks a bunch for your help. Now I can plan the usage of data tiers efficiently in Sumo Logic.